I was staring at the candlelight reflected in my champagne glass when the old woman leaned over from the next table and whispered, "Run from your husband. Tonight, if you want to live." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The restaurant noise, clinking glasses, murmured conversations, soft piano music, suddenly felt distant, muffled. I turned to look at her. She was maybe 70, thin, with gray hair pulled back tight. Her eyes weren't wild or confused. They were steady, urgent. "Excuse me?" I managed to say. She didn't repeat herself. She just pressed a folded napkin into my hand, stood up slowly, and walked toward the exit. Her companion, a younger woman, maybe her daughter, gave me one long, unreadable look before following her out. I sat there, heart hammering, the napkin burning in my palm. Across from me, Ivan smiled that easy smile of his. "Everything okay, mi amor?" I nodded, forced a smile back, but my hands were shaking. This was supposed to be perfect. Our first real date at a fancy place. Ivan had surprised me with reservations here. White tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, prices I'd never dreamed of paying. After 2 years of loneliness following my mother's death, after running my small flower shop alone and going home to an empty apartment every night, I'd finally found someone who made me laugh, someone who said he wanted to build a life with me. But now, this stranger's words sat in my chest like a stone. If this story already has you on edge, I'd love for you to subscribe. This channel is brand new, and every day I'll be sharing stories like this, real, raw, and full of unexpected turns. Your support means everything. I tucked the napkin into my purse and told myself it was nothing. A mistake. Maybe she was confused, mistook me for someone else. Ivan was pouring more wine, talking about the vacation we'd take next month, and I let his voice wash over me, trying to drown out the warning. But I couldn't shake it. My name is Jade. I'm 36. I've been a florist for 12 years, ever since I dropped out of design school to take care of my mom when she got sick. She died 3 years ago, and I inherited her little shop and about $60,000 she'd saved her whole life. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was security. It was proof that all her sacrifices, the double shifts at the hospital, the skipped vacations, the worn shoes she never replaced, had meant something. When I met Ivan at a neighborhood festival 8 months ago, I wasn't looking for love. I was exhausted, numb, going through the motions of living without really feeling alive. He walked up to my booth, bought a bouquet of sunflowers, and made a joke about how they matched my dress. It was corny. It worked. He was handsome. Dark hair going silver at the temples, warm brown eyes, a voice like melted chocolate. 42, divorced, working in sales, he said. We started slow. Coffee dates where he actually listened. Walks in the park where he didn't check his phone every 5 minutes. He asked about my mom, about what it was like losing her. He didn't try to fix my grief or tell me to move on. He just listened. "You have kind eyes," he told me once, touching my cheek. "The world needs more people like you." I melted. 2 months ago, he proposed. Simple ring, nothing flashy, but he got down on one knee in my shop after closing and said, "You deserve to be loved, Jade. Let me do that." I said yes before I'd even processed the question. We got married at City Hall 2 weeks later. His mother, Rosora, came. She worked for the housing committee, some kind of bureaucrat with connections and a reputation for getting things done. She was polite but cold, barely smiled in the photos. When I tried to hug her, she gave me a stiff pat on the back like I was a distant acquaintance. "She's just protective," Ivan explained later. "I'm her only son. She'll warm up." I told myself it didn't matter. Ivan loved me. That was enough. Then things started moving fast. So fast, I barely had time to think. "You should put my name on the shop lease," Ivan said one night. Casual, while we were washing dishes. "Just in case something happens to you. Legal protection, you know? If you got sick or had an accident, I could keep the business running." It made sense. We were married. Partners. I signed the papers he brought home the next day. "My mom knows someone who can help you invest that savings," he said another time, his arm around my shoulders as we watched TV. "Get better returns than just sitting in the bank doing nothing. You could double it in a few years." I hesitated. That money was my safety net, my mom's legacy. But Rosora came by the next evening with documents. Explained everything in her clipped, professional way. Mutual funds, guaranteed returns, low risk. She had charts, projections. It all looked legitimate. I signed those too. We should move in together, Ivan said a week later. Sell your apartment, move into my place. It's bigger, newer, we can start fresh, build our life together properly. I loved my apartment. It was small and the plumbing was temperamental, but my mom had lived there. I could still smell her perfume in the closet sometimes, still see the marks on the doorframe where she'd measured my height every birthday until I was 18. But Ivan was right. It was outdated, needed repairs I couldn't afford. His place was nicer, in a better neighborhood. It made financial sense. I put mine on the market. Everything was happening so fast, but I told myself it was normal. This was what marriage was. Merging lives. Building trust. Letting someone in completely. The apartment sold in 3 weeks. Ivan handled the paperwork. The money went into a joint account. For our future, he said, kissing my forehead. Everything we do now is for us. Then tonight. This dinner. This warning. I unfolded the napkin in the bathroom later, hands still trembling. There were just 3 words written in shaky handwriting. Call me, please, and a phone number. I stood there under the harsh fluorescent lights, staring at my reflection. My yellow dress, the one Ivan said made me look radiant. My hair curled, makeup perfect. I looked happy, like a woman celebrating her new life. But my eyes told a different story. They looked scared. I took a photo of the number and threw the napkin away. Then I washed my hands 3 times, trying to calm down, trying to convince myself this was insane. That woman was crazy. Had to be. When I got back to the table, Ivan was settling the bill. Ready to go home, mi amor? I nodded, smiled, let him take my hand. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside him in the dark, listening to his steady breathing, and all I could think was, what if she's right? The next morning I called. Hello? The voice was the same, the old woman from the restaurant. You told me to run, I said. My voice sounded thin, strange, like it belonged to someone else. Why? Why did you say that to me? There was a long pause. I could hear traffic in the background, a dog barking. Then, because I didn't. And my daughter is dead. The room tilted. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Her name was Mireia. She asked me to meet her at a cafe across town, somewhere Ivan would never go. I told him I had supplier meetings for the shop. He kissed my forehead and told me to drive safe, be smart, don't let anyone overcharge me. Mireia was already there when I arrived, sitting in the back corner with a folder in front of her. The younger woman from the restaurant sat beside her. Her niece, Clara. They both looked tired, worn down by something heavy. Sit, Mireia said. Not unkind, but firm. I sat. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My daughter's name was Olivia, she began, her voice steady but her eyes wet. She married your husband 4 years ago. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's not possible. He was married before, yes, but he said it was years ago. He said, she died 18 months after they married, Mireia continued, as if I hadn't spoken. Fell down the stairs at home. Accident, they said. Tragic. So young. Only 32. Her hands were shaking as she opened the folder, but it wasn't an accident. Inside were photos, documents, a marriage certificate with Ivan's name and Olivia's, bank statements showing transfers out of Olivia's accounts, large sums, regularly, over the course of a year, property deeds, medical reports, and a death certificate dated exactly 2 years ago. They did to her what they're doing to you, Clara said quietly, her voice thick with anger. They isolated her, convinced her to cut ties with us, said we were toxic, controlling, didn't want her to be happy. She stopped answering our calls, stopped coming to family dinners. Then they took control of her money, her apartment, her photography business. And when there was nothing left to take, no. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. Other customers turned to look. No, you're wrong. Ivan loves me. We just got married. He's been nothing but kind. Nothing but, check your accounts, Mireia said, her voice cutting through my panic. Check the shop lease. Check everything you signed. Do it today, right now. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Mireia's eyes were hard now, because I stood at my daughter's grave and watched him cry, watched him play the devastated widower, and I knew something was wrong, but I had no proof. No one believed me. The police said I was a grieving mother looking for someone to blame. She leaned forward. I won't watch him do it again. Not if I can stop it. I ran out of that cafe like the walls were closing in, like I couldn't breathe, got in my car, and just drove. Nowhere in particular, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight they ached. This was insane. Ivan loved me. He was gentle, patient. He'd never raised his voice, never been cruel. But a small voice in my head whispered, "Check anyway." I pulled into a bank parking lot and opened my banking app with shaking fingers. My savings account showed $3,147. It should have been $61,500. I refreshed the screen. Same number. I clicked on transaction history. Transfer after transfer. To Silvercrest Investment Fund. To Joint Account 4782. To Property Management LLC. All authorized. All with my electronic signature. I called the bank. Waited on hold for 7 minutes that felt like hours. "Yes, Mrs. Reyes, I see the transactions," the woman said cheerfully. "All were authorized with your signature and password. Is there a problem?" I don't remember authorizing most of these." "Well, according to our records, you did. If you believe there's been fraud, you'll need to file a report. But since these went to accounts with your name on them..." I hung up. Next, I called the landlord of my shop. He sounded uncomfortable. "Jade, I thought you knew. The lease was transferred 2 weeks ago. Ivan Reyes is now the primary leaseholder. You're listed as an employee." "What? No. That's my shop. I've been there for 12 years. I'm sorry. The paperwork was all legal, signed and notarized." I drove to the shop. There was a new lock on the door, a shiny silver deadbolt I'd never seen before. My key didn't work. I stood there on the sidewalk, jiggling the key, trying the handle, panic rising in my throat like bile. A neighbor came out of the bookstore next door, Mrs. Chen, who'd been there almost as long as me. "Jade, honey, are you okay? My key doesn't work." She looked uncomfortable. "They changed it this morning. Said you'd been let go. Something about money missing from the register." The world spun. "What? No, that's... Mrs. Chen, I own this place. It's mine." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true anymore. Not on paper. "I'm sorry," she said, and she really did look sorry. The police were here and everything. They took a report. I got back in my car, sat there staring at my shop through the windshield. The shop I'd built. The shop my mother had helped me open. The shop where I'd spent 12 years arranging flowers and chatting with customers and building something that was mine. And now it wasn't. I drove to Ivan's apartment. Our apartment. The place I'd been living for 3 weeks. My key didn't work there either. I knocked. Pounded. "Ivan, open the door!" It wasn't Ivan who answered. It was Razora. She stood in the doorway in a crisp gray suit, her hair pulled back severely, looking at me like I was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "You're not welcome here anymore," she said calmly. "Where's Ivan? Where's my husband? My son is at work, and you should leave before I call the police. We have a restraining order being filed as we speak. Theft, harassment, mental instability." She smiled then, thin and sharp and utterly cold. "You should have just accepted the divorce settlement we were going to offer. A clean break, $10,000 and you disappear. But you got greedy, started making accusations, called that reporter. Now you get nothing." My mind couldn't process the words. "I never..." "What reporter? What are you talking about? Playing dumb won't help you. We have documentation, emails, text messages, all showing your erratic behavior, your threats, your attempts at extortion." She stepped back. "Leave now, or I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing." She closed the door in my face. I heard the lock turn, the deadbolt slide home. I sat in my car in that parking lot for 2 hours, shaking so hard I thought I'd break apart. Everything was gone. My shop, my home, my money, my husband, my life. How had this happened? How had I been so blind? I thought about Olivia, about falling down the stairs, about accidents, and I understood, with perfect, terrible clarity, that I was next. I called Mireya back with shaking fingers. "Help me," I whispered. "Please. You were right. You were right about everything." "I know, Mija," she said gently. "I'm so sorry. But listen to me. You need to be brave now. Can you do that?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do. Because the alternative is what happened to my daughter. And you're stronger than that. I can see it. That's why I warned you. Something in your eyes told me you were a fighter. Over the next 3 weeks, Mireya introduced me to others. A lawyer named Natalia, who worked in family law and had seen cases like this before. Not many, but enough to recognize the pattern. A journalist named Victor, who'd been investigating housing fraud and corruption in the city for 2 years. And 2 other women, Sophia and Carmen, both widows, both destroyed by the same pattern. We met in Natalia's office, a cramped space above a laundromat that smelled like detergent and old coffee. The 5 of us sat around a scarred wooden table covered in documents and photos and timelines, piecing together a nightmare. Ivan and Razora were professionals. This wasn't opportunistic crime. It was calculated, methodical. They'd been doing it for at least 9 years. They targeted women who were alone, widows, divorcees, women estranged from their families, women with assets but no one to protect them. Ivan would sweep them off their feet. He was charming, patient, attentive. He'd move fast, push for quick marriage, but make it feel romantic, spontaneous, like fate. Then Razora would go to work. She'd use her position in the housing committee to manipulate property records, create false documentation, forge signatures. She'd set up shell companies and investment funds that looked legitimate, but were just ways to funnel money out of reach. She'd plant evidence of mental instability, missed appointments, erratic emails sent from hacked accounts, police reports for imaginary incidents. They build a narrative, Natalia explained, her dark eyes fierce behind her glasses. They make you look unstable, irresponsible, even criminal. So when the money disappears and you try to fight back, no one believes you. You're just a scorned, crazy ex-wife. Or a dead one, Clara added bitterly, because that was the other pattern. The women who fought too hard, who refused to disappear quietly, who threatened to expose them. Those women had accidents, fell down stairs, overdosed on medication they didn't take, drove off cliffs on roads they'd never been on before. Olivia had been one. Sophia's sister had been another. Carmen's cousin had been a third. They keep a record, Victor said during one meeting, spreading grainy surveillance photos across the table. We think there's a notebook, gray cover, leather-bound. Razora keeps it in her office at the housing committee. She writes everything down, names, dates, amounts. She's arrogant, thinks her position makes her untouchable, thinks she's too smart to get caught. We need to get it, Natalia said. We all looked at each other. It was insane. Breaking into a government office, stealing evidence. We could be arrested, charged. Everything we were trying to expose could be buried deeper. Or, I said slowly, we could make them think they've already won. The plan took a week to set up. It was dangerous. Stupid, maybe. But I had nothing left to lose. And I was so angry, so furiously, burningly angry, that fear felt like a small thing. I played broken, defeated. I called Ivan's number over and over, leaving tearful voicemails. Please, I'm sorry. I don't know what I did wrong. Please just talk to me. I'll do anything. I'll sign anything. He didn't answer for 3 days. Then finally a text. We can talk. Thursday 2 p.m., Café Luna, public place. Neutral ground. Safe for him. I showed up 15 minutes early. Ordered coffee I couldn't taste. My hands were shaking so badly I had to hold the cup with both palms. Ivan walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. He looked the same. Handsome. Well-dressed. Concerned. He sat across from me and reached for my hand like he cared. Jade, you look terrible. I've been sleeping in my car, I said. It was true. I had nowhere else to go. Something flickered in his eyes. Not sympathy. Satisfaction. But he hid it quickly. I'm so sorry it came to this. You just got so paranoid, mi amor. Started believing these crazy stories about me and my mother. We wanted to help you, but you pushed us away. Every word was a lie. Smooth. Practiced. How many times had he done this? I forced tears. They weren't hard to find. I know. I wasn't thinking straight. I lost my mom, and then I was so afraid of losing you too. I made mistakes, but I love you, Ivan. Can't we work this out? He squeezed my hand, playing the reluctant but compassionate husband. I want to. I do. But there's been damage. Trust issues. Legal complications. He sighed, like this hurt him. Look, we can work something out. A settlement. Nothing huge, but enough to get you back on your feet. 5,000. Maybe 10 if the lawyers agree. You sign some papers, agree not to pursue any claims. and we both move on with our lives. Clean break. No hard feelings. 10,000. Out of the 60 I'd given them, plus my shop, plus my apartment. I wanted to throw the coffee in his face. Wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll have papers drawn up. A few days, maybe a week. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His expression changed, just for a second. Confusion, then alarm. I have to go, he said abruptly, standing. Is everything okay? Fine. I'll call you. He was already walking away. He didn't know that while we'd been talking, Victor was breaking into Rosora's office. It took him 12 minutes to find the notebook. It was exactly where his source said it would be. Bottom drawer of her desk, beneath a false bottom. Gray leather cover, worn at the edges. Pages and pages in Rosora's precise handwriting. Names, bank account numbers, properties, methods, dates, and in a separate section at the back, deaths, 4 of them, with notes. Stairs, 11 p.m., no witnesses. Pills, mixed with evening wine. Car, brake line, curve on Highland Road. Victor photographed every page with shaking hands. 23 minutes total, in and out. When Rosora returned from her lunch meeting, everything looked untouched. By evening, Victor's article was live, not in the main paper yet. His editor wanted more corroboration, legal review, but on his blog, his social media, photos of the notebook pages, testimony from Mireya and the other families, bank records Natalia had obtained through legal channels, a timeline showing the pattern across 9 years and at least 7 women. The story exploded. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. By morning, local news was picking it up. By afternoon, Ivan and Rosora had been brought in for questioning. By the end of the week, they were in custody. 6 more women had come forward. The housing committee had launched an internal investigation and suspended Rosora. The police had opened a task force to review the deaths. And I testified. God, I testified. I sat in that cold interrogation room and told my story to detectives who actually listened. Showed them my bank statements, the forged documents, the timeline. I told them about the warning from Mireya, about the locked doors, about Rosora's smile when she said I'd get nothing. Then I testified at the preliminary hearing. Sat in that courtroom in a borrowed suit because I had nothing professional left to wear. Looked Ivan in the eye while a prosecutor asked me to describe how he'd manipulated me, isolated me, stolen from me. Ivan looked away first. More women came forward during the trial. 9 total. Some who'd escaped with just financial losses. Some whose sisters, daughters, cousins were dead. The trial took 4 months. There were delays, motions, legal maneuvering. Rosora's lawyers were expensive and aggressive. They tried to paint us all as vindictive, as colluding, as opportunists. But the notebook was damning. Rosora's own handwriting, her own records, arrogance and evidence in equal measure. In the end, Ivan got 12 years for fraud, theft, conspiracy, and 2 counts of voluntary manslaughter. The prosecution couldn't prove murder beyond reasonable doubt, but they proved he'd been involved in creating the circumstances that led to deaths. Rosora got 15. The judge called her the architect of a scheme that destroyed lives with cold calculation. She didn't react when they read the sentence. Just stood there, expressionless, like she was made of stone. It didn't bring Olivia back. Didn't bring back Sophia's sister or Carmen's cousin or the others. Didn't erase what they'd done to me, to all of us. But it was something. It was justice. Incomplete and imperfect, but real. I never got my shop back. Not the same one, anyway. The legal mess took a year to untangle. By the time Natalia fought through the paperwork and the courts ordered restitution, the building had been sold to a developer. My landlord was sympathetic, but helpless. But I recovered most of my savings. Not all. Some had been spent, laundered through shell companies we couldn't trace. But enough. 42,000 from frozen accounts and seized assets. Enough to start over. I opened a new flower shop 6 blocks from the old one. Smaller. Simpler. I called it Renatzer. Rebirth. Mireya helped me design the window display. White flowers for remembrance. Yellow for new beginnings. We hung a small photo of Olivia behind the counter where only I could see it. Victor wrote a feature about it for the main paper. From victim to survivor. A flower shop rises from the ashes. It brought customers. People who'd followed the story, who wanted to support me, who saw something hopeful in the idea that you could lose everything and still bloom again. Natalia stopped by on opening day with a bouquet of white roses. "You did it," she said. I looked around at the fresh paint, the bright blooms, the sunlight streaming through the glass, the register with my name on the account, the lease with only my signature. We did it. Clara came by too, and Sophia, and Carmen. We took a photo together, 5 women who'd survived and refused to stay silent. I keep it in my wallet. I'm not the same person I was that night in the restaurant. I don't trust as easily. I ask questions. I read every document twice, and have Natalia review anything important. I keep my bank accounts in my name only, with alerts for every transaction. I go to therapy every Thursday. I still have nightmares sometimes, dreams where I'm locked out of my own home, where my keys don't work, where I'm falling and no one catches me. I wake up gasping, checking my phone to make sure my accounts are still there, still mine. But I also learned something I didn't expect. I learned that there are people who see you drowning and throw you a rope, that an old woman will risk approaching a stranger in a restaurant because she can't stand by and watch another life destroyed, that even though she was too late for her own daughter, she refused to be too late for someone else. I learned that a journalist will risk his career breaking into a government office because some stories need to be told, some truths need to be exposed, even at personal cost. I learned that a lawyer will work hundreds of hours for free because justice matters more than billable hours, because sometimes winning means something bigger than money. I learned that strangers can become family, that Mireia checks on me every Sunday, that Clara texts me photos of flowers she sees and asks what they're called, that Victor still writes articles about women like us, about systems that fail to protect, about predators who hide behind charm and respectability. I learned that even when everything is taken from you, your money, your home, your trust, your sense of safety, there's one thing no one can steal: your voice. As long as you're breathing, you can speak, you can testify, you can warn others, you can fight back. And I learned that God sees. Even when you're alone and terrified and everything's been stripped away, He sees. He sends people. He opens doors. He makes a way through the wilderness. The night Mireia warned me, I thought my life was perfect. I thought I'd finally found happiness after years of grief and loneliness. But what I found instead was something more valuable. I found my strength, my voice, my refusal to be a footnote in someone else's crime. I'm 37 now. I live in a small apartment with a balcony where I grow herbs and vegetables. I have a cat named Milagro, Miracle, because that's what survival felt like. I'm rebuilding, slowly, carefully, with intention. Some days are hard. I still flinch when someone asks me to sign something. I still have moments of panic when I can't immediately access my accounts, even though I know they're safe. I still struggle with trusting people, with letting anyone get close. But most days, I arrange flowers and talk to customers and feel the sun on my face, and I remember I survived. Not because I was strong or smart or brave at the start. I was none of those things. I was lonely and grieving and desperate to be loved, but because an old woman whispered a warning, and because I finally listened, because I chose to believe her even when it seemed impossible, because I chose to check, to question, to fight, because I chose life over the comfortable lie. There's a young woman who comes into my shop sometimes, mid-20s, always well-dressed, usually with a man who talks over her when she's choosing flowers. He decides what she should get, tells her what colors are best, hands over his credit card before she can reach for her wallet. Last week, while he was taking a phone call outside, I caught her eye. "Those are your favorites, aren't they?" I said quietly, gesturing to the peonies she'd been reaching for before he suggested roses. She nodded, surprised I'd noticed. I wrapped a small bunch in brown paper. "These are on the house. For you." I couldn't. "You can." I held her gaze. "And if you ever need someone to talk to about anything, you know where to find me." She took the flowers, held them like they were precious. I don't know her story. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that man is wonderful and I'm just projecting my trauma onto innocent strangers. But maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe someday she'll remember the florist who gave her peonies. Maybe she'll remember there's someone who sees. That's all Mireia did. She saw me, and it saved my life. If this story reminded you that even in the darkest moments, help can come from unexpected places, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be in a situation that doesn't feel quite right, who might be making excuses for red flags, who might need permission to trust their instincts. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Every day I share stories like this. Stories about ordinary people facing impossible choices and finding light in the shadows. Stories about hidden kindness and unexpected courage. Stories that remind us we're not alone, even when we feel most isolated. Some stories aren't just meant to entertain. They're meant to save. Maybe this one will save someone too. Maybe that someone is you. And if it is, please listen. Check your accounts. Read what you're signing. Keep your own money. Trust your instincts. Ask questions. And know that if everything falls apart, if the worst happens, if you lose it all, there are people who will help you stand back up. I'm one of them. And I'm still here, still fighting, still blooming. You can be too. Tentar novamente ou Claude pode cometer erros. Confira sempre as respostas.